Welcome to Spyder Auto. Today we're making a taillight installation video on this 2015 BMW 5 Series. Tools needed for the install is a 1/4 inch ratchet, 8mm socket, 10mm socket, 3-inch extension, Phillips screwdriver, panel popper, trim remover, cutters, zip ties, and a flashlight. Now let's get started. After you open your trunk, first thing to do is remove this trunk piece here. So it's secured by 2 Phillips screws. Gotta remove the 2 screws. Next, you're gonna unscrew the knob. Open it up. You're gonna disconnect the latch. And you're gonna slide it up and set it aside. Next, you're gonna remove 10 retainer clips with a Phillips head. So first, you're gonna unscrew it, get your panel popper, and lift up a little bit, and disconnect your clip. So you're gonna do the same to the other 9. Next, you're gonna grab your trim remover. You're gonna tuck it under here and disconnect the push pin. You're gonna do the same to the other side. And from here, you're gonna unseat this panel. Now we have access to the inner assemblies. On the driver's side, this is the back of your inner taillight assembly. You're gonna grab your 8mm socket, and this is the stud right here. We're gonna loosen the nut. Next, you're gonna unplug the taillight, and you're gonna carefully unseat the assembly. This is the assembly, that's the stud, and this is the bracket that holds the taillight in place, and this is the nut that we loosened. Okay, bring over your Spyder taillight. On the back, we already have the bracket installed on there. It's screwed on the stud a little bit. Tuck your wires aside. And then on the edge here, you want to make sure the assembly clips onto the edge of the trunk. And after that, you're going to tighten down the nut. Next, go ahead and plug in your assembly. Next, you're going to bring over your harness. This harness connects the inner and outer assembly. Go ahead and plug it in. And in this harness, we're gonna run it on the trunk hinge with some zip ties. Now repeat the same process on the passenger side. After installing your inner taillights, we're going to reinstall the trunk lid panel. Reinstall the push pin on the side and on this side. Next, reinstall the 10 retainer clips with the Phillips head. Now carefully tighten your retainer clips. I'm going to reinstall this trunk panel. These two pieces tuck inside here. I'm going to reinstall the hinge. Close it, turn the knob to lock it in place, and then reinstall the 2 Phillips screws. This next step, we have to remove the floor panel. We're going to grab the handle to lift up, and we're going to remove these 2 plastic 10mm nuts. Next, we're going to carefully lift up and unseat the floor panel. Next, we have to remove this trunk panel here by removing 4 plastic push pins. We're missing 1. Next, we're going to lift the bottom forward and carefully lift up. And on the back, we're going to disconnect this harness. And last, we're going to remove this panel here. Now, working on the driver's side outer, we have to open up this panel. So we're going to remove 2 push pins securing it. We have 1 up here and 1 up here. After removing those 2 push pins, you can grab the panel from the bottom and just slide it out. This piece here is going to untuck under the hinge. Now we have access to the back of the tail light. We're going to remove 3 8mm nuts. There's 1. Here's 2. This is 3. And then from here, we're going to disconnect the outer assembly. After that, remove this panel using your trim remover. Just lift up. Then from here, we can carefully unseat the tail light. Now you're going to bring over your new tail light. You have these 2 connectors. I'm going to stick them in the rectangle and carefully seat your tail light. We're going to start by reinstalling nuts 2 and 3. Make sure your tail light is lined up with the body when tightening down your bolts. Now reinstall nut number 1. I'm going to reinstall this trim piece. I have 3 guide pins drop in here, here, and here. Just gonna line them both up from the top and clip it in. So next step, we're gonna grab this harness that's connected from the inner assembly, and we're gonna connect it to the outer assembly. So I'm gonna finish off by zip tying it onto the trunk hinge, plug in our inner with the outer assembly, and then we're gonna plug in our outer assembly to the vehicle. And then this slack here, we're just gonna let it hang so that when the trunk closes, it's not gonna get snagged or pulled. Reinstall the panel. And then reinstall the push pins. Now repeat the same process on the passenger side. Reinstall this trunk panel. Reinstall this cover. Go ahead and plug in the outlet. Now these 4 guide pins fall into these slots here, and the weather strip goes over this piece. Next, reinstall the 4 plastic push pins securing it. Now reinstall your floor panel. And then reinstall the 2 10mm nuts securing it. Now that we're finished with the installation, let's close the trunk and test the tail light functions.